The Abyss of Mars, Chapter 1. The storm Mars had always been a harsh mistress, red dust swirling beneath an anemic sky, thin air whipping through craggy canyons and lifeless plains. But on this day, Mars raged a storm, larger than any seen. Centuries tore across the barren surface. Gale-force winds screamed through the atmosphere, hurling sand and debris in waves so thick they blotted out the pale sunlight. The Martian regolith trembled beneath the fury of the tempest. Lieutenant Commander Kara Vex stood in the observation bay of Ares Station, perched on the edge of Valles Marineris. Her gloved hands pressed against the reinforced glass as she watched the storm rage across the landscape below. "Pressure's dropping fast," said Dr. Elias Kain, his voice crackling over the intercom. "How fast?" Kara's voice was steady, but her eyes were narrow with calculation. "Fast enough that we might have to evacuate." Kara turned toward him. Kain's face was pale beneath the sterile glow of the station lights, his dark hair slick with sweat. The storm was pushing the limits of the station's integrity, and they both knew it. But then, the ground below shuddered. The storm screamed louder, and through the roiling dust, Kara saw something. A shadow, massive, angular. Rising from beneath the shifting sands. "Oh my God," Kain whispered. Through the haze, the outline of a titanic pyramid emerged. Its smooth, dark surface was etched with strange geometric symbols, glowing faintly in shades of deep crimson and cobalt blue. Dust and debris sloughed off its sides as if it had been buried for millennia, waiting for this precise moment. "That wasn't there before," Kain muttered. Kara's eyes widened as the sand cascaded away, revealing a massive door at the base of the pyramid. It was covered in alien symbols. Not Martian, not human. Something else. Symbols pulsing with faint rhythmic light. "Kain," Kara whispered. "I see it," he replied. "We need to—" A deafening boom reverberated through the station as the storm crashed harder against the outer walls. Lights flickered. The station AI buzzed warnings through the comms. Then the door began to open. A seam appeared down the center of the pyramid's surface, spreading slowly apart with a low, grinding moan. Beyond the widening gap, blackness. Kara felt it in her bones, a sudden, overwhelming pull, a hum of ancient power vibrating through the thin Martian air. "Kara, we're not alone," Kain said softly. She took a single step toward the glass, heart pounding. A strange, almost imperceptible whispering began to rise from the open doorway. The storm outside intensified. The glass of the observation bay shook violently. And then, a figure emerged from the darkness, humanoid, tall. Pale light reflected off its metallic frame, its elongated head tilted toward the station. The symbols on the door pulsed faster. The figure raised a hand, and the storm stopped, just like that. The figure turned toward the station, its eyes burning with golden light. "Kara," Kain's voice was barely a whisper. "It's looking at us." And then the glass shattered. Chapter 2. The descent car awoke to the taste of iron in her mouth and the sound of her own ragged breathing. Alarms blared through the station, red light pulsing in broken intervals. "Kain," she croaked. A sharp hiss of static crackled in her earpiece. "Kara, you're alive!" She groaned, pressing a hand to the side of her head. Blood. Her helmet had fractured during the blast. The glass was gone. The storm was gone. And through the broken viewport, the pyramid was closer. The door was now fully open, revealing a massive, dark passageway that plunged deep into the Martian crust. The figure was gone. "Kain, where are you?" Kara pushed herself to her knees. "I'm at the airlock. Listen, Kara. Something is pulling the atmosphere toward that doorway." Kara's breath hitched. "It's breathing?" "I don't know, but the pressure differential is increasing." Kara forced herself to stand, ignoring the ache in her muscles. Her suit's HUD flickered with low oxygen warnings. "We need to investigate," she said. "Are you insane?" Kain snapped. "Look." "At it," Kara said. "It's not a natural structure, it's ancient. And something wants us to go inside. There was a long silence. Then Kain sighed. Meet me at the lock. They descended into the darkness. The inside of the pyramid was vast. The walls smooth and dark, lined with faintly glowing symbols. The deeper they went, the more oppressive the air became, cold, metallic. Then they emerged into a massive cavern, a city. Skyscrapers of dark stone and metal stretched toward a ceiling lost in shadow. Suspended bridges connected massive platforms. The architecture was alien. Strange angles and curves that made Kara's head ache just to look at. Impossible. Kain breathed. And in the center of the city, a pit, wide, bottomless. Faint lights drifted lazily in the depths, pulsing softly like stars beneath dark water. Kara stepped toward the edge, drawn by the soft glow. And then, the lights shivered. Kara, Kain's voice sharpened. A soft sound rose from the pit. A whisper. She stepped closer. Kara, stop! Too late. A tendril of dark mist shot up from the pit and wrapped around her ankle. Kara screamed as her foot slid toward the edge. Kain grabbed her arm and yanked her back. The tendril retreated. The whispers ceased. Kara's breathing was ragged. Her eyes were wide. What the hell was that? Kain demanded. Kara stared into the pit, the faint lights pulsing in slow rhythm. I don't know, she whispered. But it's awake. Chapter 3, Voices in the Dark. They set up camp at the edge of the cavern. Kain activated a perimeter field, a soft white glow flickering along the ground. Kara sat on the cold stone floor, her back against a dark pillar. Her hands trembled. The feeling from the pit, the cold alien pull, hadn't left her. You okay? Kain sat down next to her, handing over a nutrient pack. She took it, but didn't open it. No. What happened down there? She shook her head. I heard voices, whispering. Kain's brow furrowed. Whispers? Not words. Thoughts. Kara rubbed her temples. They wanted me to come closer. Kain's expression darkened. He pulled out a handheld scanner and aimed it toward the pit. This thing is emitting low frequency. Pulses almost like brainwaves. Brainwaves, Kain nodded. It's alive. Then he saw the ground shook. The city groaned, and from the depths of the pit the faint lights began to rise, slowly. Figures, shadows drifting toward the surface. Kara. Kain's voice was sharp with panic. She stood, eyes wide. They're coming, and then the first of them emerged from the pit, tall, featureless, eyes burning with golden light. Kara, Kain whispered. Kara took a step back. I think we just woke them up. Chapter 4, Awakening. They stood frozen at the edge of the pit as the figures rose, tall, silent. Their elongated forms drifted upward like smoke molded into humanoid shapes, golden light burning in their hollow eyes. Kara's breath came in, sharp gasps as the first of the figures reached the surface. It hovered there, its form pulsing faintly in the dark. Slowly, it turned toward them. Kara, Kain whispered. What are they? The figure stepped forward. A low hum resonated through the cavern, deep, resonant, a sound that buzzed in Kara's skull. And then it spoke, not in words, not in sound, but in thought. Kara's mind was suddenly flooded with images, stars spinning in the void, red deserts bleeding into black oceans, a sun dying in a violent blaze of white fire. And beneath it all, a voice, cold and ancient. You are not of this place. Kara stumbled backward, clutching her head. It's inside my mind. Kain rushed toward her, grabbing her by the arm. What's it saying? Kara's eyes squeezed shut as the visions intensified. You have awakened us. What are you? Kara gasped. The figure's golden eyes flared brighter. The others hovered silently behind it, their bodies pulsing with faint light. We are the first. Kain stepped between Kara and the figure, raising his sidearm. Stay back! The figure's gaze shifted toward him. A wave of cold washed through the air. Kain's gun jerked violently from his hand and hovered mid-air before shattering into fragments. Kain's eyes widened. What the hell? You trespass, the Figure raised one elongated arm, and the cavern trembled. Kara forced herself to stand. We didn't mean to. You have opened the way. Kara's heart pounded. The way? To what? The figure's golden eyes flared. To what comes next? A deep rumbling rose from the pit. The soft lights within began to swirl and rise, forming tendrils of dark mist. The figure turned back toward the pit. The others will wake. The figures began to descend, sinking silently back toward the pit. Wait, Kara called out. What's waking? The figure's golden eyes flickered one last time. The end of all things. And then they were gone. Kain exhaled shakily. What the hell just happened? Kara stared into the pit. The swirling lights had vanished, but the cold hum remained. A deep, resonant pulse beneath the surface of her mind. We woke something up, Kara said softly. And it's not finished. Chapter 5. The threshold back at the camp, Kain paced the edge of the perimeter field, his hands clenched into fists. We need to call this in. We can't, Kara replied. Kain's head whipped toward her. What do you mean we can't? If we report this, EarthGov will shut it down, quarantine the site, maybe even nuke it from orbit. Kara's eyes darkened. We need to understand what we've found here before they bury it. Kain's face twisted with disbelief. Understand it. Kara, those things just threatened us. Kara's gaze was steady. They warned us. Same thing. Kara crossed the cavern floor, her eyes fixed on the pit. They called themselves the first, but the way they said it, Kain hesitated. Like they weren't the last? Kara nodded. Exactly, Kain exhaled. So, what's the plan? Kara's eyes narrowed. We go deeper. Kain's mouth opened, then shut. He ran a hand down his face. You're out of your mind. Kara's gaze didn't waver. We've come this far. We need answers. Kain's jaw clenched. You're going to get us killed. Kara picked up her helmet and slotted it back into place. Not if we're careful. They descended into the pit. The path spiraled downward, lined with ancient carvings that pulsed faintly as they passed. Strange symbols, fractal patterns, and shapes that twisted impossibly, bending light in ways that made Kara's eyes ache. Kain trailed behind her, his scanner blinking erratically. Massive energy signatures down here, he said. And something else. Magnetic distortions. Alive? Kara asked. Could be, Kain said. Or it could be a warning. They reached a circular chamber at the base of the spiral. A door stood before them. Massive. Black metal carved with the same strange symbols. Only these symbols moved, shifting and sliding across the surface as if the metal were breathing. Kara stepped closer. A faint thump vibrated beneath her feet, a deep rhythmic pulse. It's alive, she whispered. Suddenly, the symbols flared brightly. The door began to slide open. Kain drew his sidearm instinctively. Kara. A deep hum rolled through the air, and then the door parted, revealing a vast chamber beyond. Rows of tall, glass-like pods stretched into the dark, each one filled with shadowed figures, human-like forms suspended in a viscous dark fluid. Faint lights blinked at the base of each pod. Stasis pods, Kain said. Kara stepped toward the nearest pod, brushing her gloved hand against the glass. A pale face drifted within, humanoid but different. Elongated features. Thin gray skin, golden eyes beneath closed lids. What the hell, Kain whispered. Kara's breath quickened. They're not dead. Suddenly, a pulse of light flashed through the chamber. The pods began to glow. Kain's scanner shrieked. Energy! Bike! A low whisper rose through the air, the same voice Kara had heard before. They are waking. Kara's eyes widened, and then the first set of eyes opened. Chapter 6. The figure inside the pod's eyes flared with golden light. Slowly, its thin hand pressed against the inside of the glass. Kara! Kain's voice was sharp. Back away! The pod hissed. The glass began to lift. Kara stepped back as the figure within slowly emerged. Its body was tall, slender, wrapped in strange metallic fabric that seemed to shimmer in the low light. Its golden eyes focused on Kara. The figure's mouth opened. Kara. Kara's heart skipped. It knows my name. The figure stepped toward her, its movements slow, deliberate. Behind it, the other pods began to open. More figures stepped out, identical, their golden eyes burning in the dark. The first figure reached toward Kara. Join us. Kain raised his sidearm. Kara, move! The figure's head tilted toward Kain. His hand jerked violently. The gun flew from his grip, slamming into the bar wall. The figure's gaze returned to Kara. We have waited. Kara took a step back. Waited for what? The figure's golden eyes darkened. For the key to return. The key? The figure's gaze sharpened. You. Kara's breath hitched. I don't understand. You will. Suddenly, a deep rumbling rolled through the chamber. The walls trembled. The figures turned toward the dark far end of the room. A pair of massive doors began to open, and beyond them, a deeper darkness. A voice whispered through the air, low and cold. And now, the hunger wakes. The golden-eyed figures turned toward Kara in unison. You must choose. Kara's eyes widened as the darkness stirred. Kara, Kain said. She took a breath. Let's find out what's behind that door. Chapter 7. The Hunger. The cavern trembled beneath Kara's boots as the massive doors at the far end of the chamber slid apart with a grinding moan. A wave of frigid air rushed outward, carrying the metallic taste of iron and ozone. Kara's breath hitched as she peered into the widening darkness beyond the threshold. Shapes moved within it, not the graceful humanoid figures that had emerged from the stasis pods, but something darker, heavier. Golden light pulsed from the eyes of the newly awakened figures. They stood motionless, lined up along the chamber's walls, their elongated bodies wrapped in metallic fabric that clung to their slender frames. Kain stood beside Kara, his breath ragged. Kara, this feels wrong. I know. Her voice was flat, her gaze fixed on the churning blackness beyond the door. A deep thump echoed through the cavern, a low, resonant pulse that Kara felt in her chest. The figures standing along the walls responded in unison, heads tilting toward the sound, golden eyes brightening. You must choose, one of them said, its voice pressing into Kara's mind like an icy blade. Kara's jaw clenched. Choose what? To serve or to be consumed? Suddenly, the darkness within the doorway surged. A sound emerged, low and guttural, a deep echoing growl that vibrated through the walls. Shapes began to form within the black, massive, sinewy forms outlined in tendrils of dark mist. Faint red lights shimmered in the depths, like distant embers beneath a stormy sea. A pair of eyes opened within the dark. Not gold, red, deep and burning. A new voice rose through the chamber, cutting through the others like broken glass. They have awakened us. The black tendrils shifted and curled, spilling out through the open doorway. Shapes emerged from the mist. Massive, insectile limbs tipped with razor-sharp claws. Their dark bodies pulsed with crimson light, and where their heads should have been, only clusters of red eyes stared outward. Jesus Christ, Kain breathed. What the hell is that? The Hunger, one of the golden-eyed figures, said calmly. A shape emerged fully from the dark. Nearly 3 meters tall, its jagged limbs scraped across the stone as it stepped toward them. A row of needle-like spines unfurled along its back, red light flickering across its segmented carapace. The golden-eyed figure stepped toward Kara. They were imprisoned here for a reason. Kara's hands curled into fists. What reason? Because they are death, the creature lunged. Kain tackled Kara as a jagged claw speared through the air where she had stood. They rolled hard across the floor, crashing into a support column. Kain's sidearm was already in his hand. He fired 3 quick shots into the creature's chest. The bullets struck and dissolved into black mist. Shit, Kain shouted. The creature's red eyes narrowed. It rushed toward them, and then the golden-eyed figure raised a hand. A shockwave of golden light exploded from its palm, striking the creature square in the chest. The creature shrieked, a hideous sound, and stumbled backward. "Leave this place," the figure commanded. The creature hissed, and then retreated back toward the dark doorway. The golden figure turned toward Kara, its golden eyes dimmed slightly. "They have fed before." Kara's pulse hammered in her ears. "Fed on what?" The figure's gaze sharpened. "Worlds." Kain exhaled sharply. "Fantastic." Kara pushed herself upright. "And you? What are you?" "The first, but not the last." "No." The figure's golden eyes burned brighter. "We were created to stand guard, to contain the hunger." Kara's gaze narrowed. "And now, the hunger knows you are here." A deep rumble vibrated beneath their feet. The darkness beyond the doorway began to stir again. Kain stepped toward Kara. "We need to leave." Kara's gaze hardened. "We can't. Not yet." Kain's eyes widened. "Are you insane?" Kara's gaze remained locked on the dark. "If they get out of this place, and it's not just Mars that's in danger, it's everything." Chapter 8. The architects Kara and Kain followed the golden-eyed figure down a long corridor lined with ancient carvings. The walls pulsed faintly with blue and gold light. The figure's voice filled Kara's mind. "The hunger was born of the void." "Explain," Kara said. "Before your species, before your stars, there were the architects. They created worlds, shaped matter from the fabric of space itself. And the hunger?" The figure's gaze darkened. "The architects created it too, to control. Entropy. But it grew beyond their control. It learned to feed, and it fed on them." Kain's face paled. "You're telling me an ancient race of universe-shaping gods built something that ate them?" "Yes." "And you were built to stop it?" Kara asked. "Yes." Kara's brow furrowed. "Then why were you asleep?" The figure's gaze sharpened. "Because we failed." Kara's blood ran cold. The corridor ended at another doorway, smaller than the others, but flanked by two massive statues of humanoid figures with elongated heads and curved metallic armor. The figure pressed its hand to the door. It slid open with a low hiss. Inside, a chamber filled with floating holograms, spinning star charts, alien scripts. A rotating galaxy at the center of the room, shimmering in pale blue light. The figure stepped toward the projection. "The hunger cannot be destroyed. It can only be contained." Kara stepped toward the projection, her eyes scanning the galaxy. Dozens of stars were dark, black voids where planets and systems had once existed. "They've fed recently," Kara murmured. "Yes." Kain's eyes darkened. "And now they know we're here." The figure's golden gaze turned toward Kara. "They will not stop." Kara's jaw tightened. "So how do we stop them?" "You cannot, but you can." The figure hesitated. "Only with a key." "What key?" Kara asked. The figure's golden eyes sharpened. "You." Kara stepped back. "Why me?" "Because you carry the genetic code of the architects." Kara's breath hitched. "That's impossible." "Is it?" Kara's hands curled into fists. "What do I have to do?" "Enter the hive." Kain's head snapped toward the figure. "Absolutely not. They are not fully awake yet. If you reach the core, you can seal them back into stasis." "And if I fail?" Kara asked. The figure's gaze darkened. "Then all worlds will fall." Chapter 9. Into the hive, Kara stood at the edge of the black chasm, the swirling mist pulsing with a slow, deliberate rhythm, like breathing. The vast doorway stood open before her, the dark shapes within shifting beneath the crimson glow of countless red eyes. The sound coming from beyond the threshold wasn't just noise. It was a voice, low and resonant, vibrating beneath her skin. It was calling to her. Kain gripped her arm. "We don't have to do this." Kara's gaze was steady. "Yes, we do." Kain's eyes were sharp. "Then I'm coming with you." Kara smiled faintly. "I wouldn't have it any other way." They stepped toward the blackness. A sharp chill bit through their suits as they crossed the threshold. The mist curled around their limbs, dark tendrils licking at their boots like sentient smoke. The ground beneath their feet was metallic, but strange, like a black alloy that shimmered faintly beneath the mist. Shapes moved within the fog, flickers of red light. The low hum of the hunger vibrated through the air, deeper than sound. A deep voice whispered through Kara's mind. "Welcome." "Key." Her breath hitched. The voice was layered, not one but many. Countless overlapping voices all speaking in eerie, perfect unison. Shapes emerged from the mist, tall, insectile forms with jagged limbs and clusters of crimson eyes burning like embers beneath blackened chitinous armor. They moved with unsettling grace, their limbs sliding across the ground without sound. Kara's pulse hammered. Kain raised his sidearm. "Kara, hold." Kain's eyes widened. "What?" "Just wait." Kain's finger tensed on the trigger. The largest of the shapes approached, nearly 4 meters tall, its segmented limbs ending in razor-sharp claws. A jagged spine curled upward along its back. It stepped toward Kara, lowering its head until its burning eyes were level with hers. "Kara." The voice was colder this time, more focused. The other voices receded. "You are the key." Kara's breath quickened. "Why me?" The creature's crimson eyes flared. "The architects made you." Kain's eyes widened. "She's human. She wasn't made by anyone." "No, she is the last fragment of what came before." Kara's mouth went dry. "You're saying I'm part of the architects?" "Yes." Kara's hands curled into fists. "How?" "The blood of the architects flows within you. That's impossible." The creature's crimson eyes darkened. "Is it?" Kain's gaze hardened. "Enough games. Why is she the key?" The creature's claws clicked softly as it stepped closer. Its limbs unfolded slightly, shifting with an insectile precision. "Because she can open the gate." Kara's jaw tightened. "What gate?" "The true gate." Suddenly the mist parted. A massive structure stood at the far end of the cavern. A dark, cyclopean monolith stretching upward into the fog. It pulsed with deep crimson light, veins of dark energy running through the stone like black lightning. Kara's heart hammered. What's behind it? Freedom. For who? The creature's jagged mouth curled into what might have been a smile. For us. Kain's sidearm snapped upward. Not happening. The creature's eyes narrowed. You cannot stop what is already awake. Kara's gaze sharpened. Then why talk to us at all? The creature's gaze flicked toward her. Because you are the key, and the key must be turned. Kain's finger twitched on the trigger. If you think we're going to open that gate, you misunderstand. The creature's head tilted unnaturally. You have already begun. Suddenly, the ground beneath their feet shook. A deep, grinding sound resonated through the cavern as the massive monolith began to shift. Red veins of energy pulsed brighter through its dark surface. Kain's eyes widened. What the hell is happening? Kara's breath quickened. I don't know. The creature stepped back, its burning eyes flickering. The gate is opening. Kara's pulse spiked. We didn't open anything. You came here. The ground beneath them fractured. Shards of dark metal rose into the air, twisting as gravity seemed to falter. Kara stumbled back as the mist swirled into violent spinning eddies. Kain grabbed her arm, yanking her back toward the center of the platform. Kara, we need to move. A pulse of red light exploded outward from the monolith. Kain screamed. His body lifted off the ground and slammed hard into the far wall. Kain! Kara lunged toward him, but an invisible force gripped her. Her limbs locked. Her body rose into the air. You will open the gate. Red light burned through her skull. Kara screamed. Images flooded her mind. Alien worlds consumed by black fire, stars collapsing into nothingness. The architect's towering forms consumed by crimson tendrils of dark energy. Kara's eyes flared with golden light. Stop it! A second pulse of energy exploded outward from her body. The creature's form twisted and shrieked as golden light cut through the red mist. Kain groaned, pushing himself upright. Blood ran from his mouth. Kara! Kara's body hovered. Above the ground, surrounded by spiraling golden light, her eyes glowed. Not red, but brilliant white gold. The crimson tendrils surrounding her body vaporized under the force of the golden aura. The creature recoiled. Impossible. Kara's gaze sharpened. "I'm not your key." She raised her hand, golden light coiled around her arm. "And you?" Kara's voice deepened, layered beneath a second voice. "Something ancient. Are not welcome here." She thrust her hand outward. A blast of golden light erupted from her palm. The creature's shriek echoed through the cavern as the light struck it full in the chest. Its body twisted violently, dark mist unraveling from its limbs as the golden light consumed it. The crimson eyes flared once more, and then died. The creature collapsed into ash. Kara's body lowered to the ground, her golden aura faded. Her knees buckled. Kain rushed toward her, catching her before she hit the ground. "Kara, are you—" "I'm fine." Kara's breath hitched. She looked toward the monolith. The red light had faded, but the veins beneath the surface still pulsed faintly. Kain followed her gaze. "We need to shut that thing down." Kara pushed herself upright. Her body still burned with golden energy, but beneath it, she could feel the pull of the dark. "It's not over." Kain's hand tightened on her shoulder. "So what's the plan?" Kara's eyes darkened. "We go to the core." Kain's mouth opened, but Kara was already walking toward the monolith. "Are you serious?" Kara's gaze sharpened. "If we don't finish this now..." Her gaze narrowed toward the massive black surface. "It's going to finish us." Kain sighed heavily, raising his sidearm. "All right then." He stepped beside her. "Let's finish this." The monolith's surface pulsed as they approached. Dark, veins curling beneath the stone. Kara's hand hovered inches from the surface. Her eyes glowed faintly with golden light. "Open it." The monolith trembled beneath her touch, and the gate began to open. Chapter 10. The Descent. The monolith trembled beneath Kara's touch, the dark veins pulsing with red and gold light. As her hand pressed against the cold surface, a low resonance vibrated through the air, shaking the cavern's walls. The swirling mist around them began to thin, spiraling toward the gate as if drawn by some unseen force. Kain stood at her side, his sidearm raised, eyes narrowed toward the growing seam of light in the center of the monolith. "Kara, are you sure about this?" "No." Kara's gaze sharpened. "But we're out of options." A deep thump echoed through the chamber. The seam of light widened. A jagged opening formed in the surface of the monolith, crimson energy writhing along the edges. Beyond it, darkness. An empty void, so deep it seemed to bend light inward. The voice returned, low and resonant, pressing into Kara's skull. "Come." Kain's jaw tightened. "Nope, not liking this at all." Kara took a step forward. The mist curled toward her feet. The light in her eyes flared brighter. "We don't have a choice." Kain exhaled sharply, holstering his weapon. "Then I'm going with you." Kara's gaze softened. "Kain, don't even try to talk me out of it." His eyes darkened. "You're not doing this alone." Kara's hand hovered over the edge of the gate. The mist swirled, and the dark energy licked at her skin. "All right then." She inhaled deeply. "Let's finish this." They stepped into the darkness. The sensation of falling was immediate and absolute. There was no sound, no air, only the pressure of the void closing in around them as the gate pulled them downward. Kara's skin burned with cold fire, the golden light beneath her fingertips, flickering as the dark mist slithered across her limbs. Kain's hand wrapped around her wrist, pulling her toward him. His mouth moved, but no sound emerged. The mist thickened. A faint crimson glow flickered beneath it, like distant fire. Beneath storm clouds, shapes twisted within the dark, long, spindly limbs tipped with jagged claws. Eyes, clusters of red light, opened in the depths. The void shuddered. "You have come to open the gate." Kara's eyes narrowed. "No," she said, her voice cutting. "Through the dark, I've come to close it." A pulse of energy exploded outward from the mist, jagged tendrils of red lightning arcing through the black. Kara and Kain were thrown apart, spiraling through the void. Kara twisted midair, her arms flaring wide as golden light erupted from her chest. The tendrils dissolved against the light. "Kain, I'm here." His voice cut through the storm. A shape emerged from the black, tall, monstrous. The same creature they had fought before, but larger. Its limbs curled outward like jagged spines. Its body was woven from dark mist and crimson light. It stepped forward, its burning eyes locking on Kara. "You cannot destroy us." Kara's feet hit solid ground. Her hands curled into fists. The golden light in her veins surged. "Watch me." The creature's limbs snapped outward. Dark energy surged toward her. Kara's hands lifted. A wall of golden light exploded from her palms, striking the creature mid-charge. It screamed as the light burned through its limbs, twisting the dark mist into smoke. The ground beneath them splintered. The void trembled. Kain rushed to her side, his sidearm raised. "That thing's not going down easy." Kara's eyes flared brighter. "Good." The creature's eyes narrowed. "You cannot win." Kara's jaw clenched. "I'm not trying to win." Her hand thrust outward. A pulse of golden light struck the creature's chest, and behind it the dark gate began to close. The creature shrieked. "No!" Kain's eyes widened. "Kara, whatever you're doing, I need more time." The creature lunged toward her. Kain fired 3 shots, each one exploding against the creature's torso. It stumbled, but the crimson light behind its eyes surged brighter. "Kara!" The creature's limbs shot forward. Kara's hands flared. Golden light erupted from her body. The creature struck the light and burned. A shockwave ripped through the void as the creature screamed, its form unraveling beneath the golden energy. The gate behind it trembled and began to close. The creature's burning eyes flared. Kara's eyes narrowed. "Stay dead." A final pulse of golden light surged from her hands, and the creature disintegrated. The gate's edges folded inward. Kain's arm wrapped around Kara's waist, pulling her toward him as the void collapsed. They fell, and light swallowed them whole. Chapter 11. Aftermath. Kara's eyes fluttered open. Blinding light pressed against her eyelids and her body felt heavy, like lead, every muscle screaming in protest as sensation crept back into her limbs. Her breath hitched. The sharp scent of iron and ozone filled her lungs. Cold stone pressed against her back. A low rhythmic hum echoed through the cavern walls. "Kara," Kain's voice. A hand brushed her cheek, rough, calloused, familiar. Her eyes opened. Kain's face hovered above her, bruised and bloodied, his dark hair sticking to his forehead. His eyes were wide with worry. "Kara?" She coughed, her body shuddering as she tried to sit up. Kain's arm slid beneath her shoulders, lifting her gently. His warmth steadied her. "I'm..." Kara's breath hitched. "I'm okay." Kain exhaled, his hand tightening on her shoulder. "You're not okay." Kara blinked hard, forcing her vision to stabilize. The cavern above them stretched into darkness, illuminated by faint golden veins running through the stone. The red mist was gone. The crimson light was gone. But the air still vibrated with power, subtle but present. Her gaze sharpened toward the center of the cavern. The gate was gone. Only a jagged ring of scorched stone remained where it had stood. Black cracks spiderwebbed outward from the center, glowing faintly with residual energy. We did it?" Kain asked. His voice was quiet, hesitant. Kara pushed herself upright, brushing tangled hair from her face. "I think so." Kain's arm stayed around her waist as she climbed to her feet. His eyes flicked toward the ruined ground. "That thing's gone?" Kara's gaze darkened. "I don't know." A low hum vibrated through the air. Kain's hand twitched toward his sidearm. "Kara, I hear it too." Kara's gaze snapped toward the far end of the cavern. A figure stood at the edge of the shadows. It was humanoid, tall and slender, its form wrapped in shifting metallic light. Its golden eyes burned softly beneath a smooth, obsidian-like face. Thin plates of dark metal shifted along its body as it stepped forward with quiet grace. Kain's weapon was up in an instant. Kara's hand shot toward his wrist. Wait! Kain's eyes widened. Wait! Kara's gaze didn't waver. The figure approached slowly, the air bending around it as if reality itself were uncertain of its presence. When it spoke, its voice was layered, smooth and resonant, echoing beneath the surface of Kara's skin. You have closed the gate. Kara's breath hitched. Her hand unconsciously drifted toward her chest. Her skin still burned faintly where the golden light had erupted from her veins. Yes, she said carefully. The figure's gaze sharpened. But the hunger remains. Kain's jaw tightened. What the hell does that mean? The figure's gaze shifted toward him. The hunger cannot be destroyed, only contained. Kara's gaze sharpened. Why? It is older than your kind. Kain's weapon remained steady. What exactly are you? The figure's head tilted slightly. We were the first. Kara's breath quickened. The architects. Yes. The figure's golden gaze intensified. You carry our blood. Kara's pulse hammered. That's not possible. And yet, Kara's mouth felt dry. Why me? The architects chose you. Kain's expression hardened. For what? The figure's gaze sharpened. To stand between the worlds. The golden light beneath Kara's skin flickered. She touched her chest, feeling the residual hum beneath her ribs. What happens now? She asked quietly. The figure's gaze darkened. The hunger is contained. For now. Kain's weapon lowered. For now, it will try to break free. Kara's gaze sharpened. And if it does, you will be called again. Kara's eyes narrowed. What if I refuse? The figure's gaze darkened. You won't. Kara's jaw tightened. And if I fail? The figure's gaze glowed brighter. Then all worlds will fall. The figure's golden form began to fade, dissolving into thin trails of light. Kara Thorne. Kara's eyes widened. Prepare. The figure vanished. Silence filled the cavern. Kain's breath hitched. Well, and that's not terrifying at all. Kara exhaled, brushing a hand through her tangled hair. Yeah. Kain's eyes flicked toward the broken ground where the gate had stood. You think it'll hold? Kara's gaze darkened. It'll have to. Chapter 12. Legacy. The Martian horizon stretched wide beneath the thin, cold sky. Phobos hung low on the horizon, casting faint silver light over the jagged cliffs and deep canyons. Dust storms curled along the rocky plains, their edges scattering. Beneath the chill of the fading day, Kara stood at the edge of a canyon, her arms crossed over her chest. The wind tugged at her hair, carrying the taste of iron and sand. Kain stood beside her, his hands tucked into his jacket pockets. His bruises were fading, but the tension hadn't left his jaw. So, he said quietly, we're alive. Kara's gaze flicked toward him. You sound surprised, Kain smiled faintly. Because I am. Kara's gaze returned to the canyon. Below, what happens now? Kain's gaze narrowed. We rebuild, we warn the others. And if they don't listen? Kain's expression hardened. They will. Kara's gaze sharpened. Beneath her feet the rock trembled faintly, the golden veins beneath the stone pulsing in slow, measured intervals. You think it's really over? Kain asked. Kara's jaw tightened. No. Kain's mouth pressed into a thin line. Then what do we do? Kara's gaze lifted toward the horizon. We prepare. Kain exhaled. You keep saying that. Kara smiled faintly. Because it's true. Kain's hand brushed against hers. His touch was warm despite the chill in the air. And you? Kain's gaze softened. You really think you can handle this? Kara's eyes glowed faintly with golden light. I don't know. Kain's hand closed around hers. Then you're not doing it alone. Kara's gaze softened. No, she said. I'm not. The ground beneath their feet trembled. A pulse of golden light curled beneath the stone. Faint but steady. Kain's gaze narrowed. What is that? Kara's eyes darkened. The architect's legacy. Kain's grip tightened on her hand. Then, I guess we've got work to do. Kara's mouth curved into a slight smile. Yeah, her gaze lifted toward the dark horizon. And next time, we'll be ready. Then. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the story. Let me know in the comments what ideas you would like the next story to be about. Please leave a thumbs up, share, subscribe, comment.